Welcome to episode 14 of the Maddie's Joy, an Angelman Journey podcast. I am your host, Adam Birchmeyer. Due to some technical difficulties, this week we are actually going to bring an episode that I did back before the podcast was even a thing. I did a video blog called The Other Side of Grief, where I talk about kind of that transition from being newly diagnosed to accepting Maddie's diagnosis and how I kind of move forward. So I hope that you guys enjoy, and we will be back next week with a brand new episode. Until next time, have a wonderful day. All right, today I'm going to be talking about the mourning period of Maddie's Angelman diagnosis. It truly felt like a loss, and I don't say that lightly. I can only imagine the feeling of losing a child, and I hope that Maddie outlives me. I say that it felt like a loss because there were hopes and dreams that will never be realized. What I've learned on this journey with Maddie's diagnosis is that it's okay. I'm okay. She's okay, and her family's okay. When Madeline Joan Birchmeyer entered this world, she did it on her own time. My wife and I walked into the hospital on a Monday to be induced. Maddie finally came into the world on a Wednesday. Not only did she take 3 days of induction to get here, but she also arrived in the beginning of the pandemic. The country shut down in March. Maddie was born in June. When we brought Maddie home, she was colicky. The only time she wasn't crying was when she was being fed or sleeping. The only way we could get her to sleep was by holding her. Now I sure do miss those days of snuggling her, but I do not miss those cries. Eventually, her symptoms subsided. A whole new set of challenges were ahead. At 5 months, Maddie was seemingly hitting all her milestones. In November of 2020, she was rolling. She wouldn't roll again until May of 2021. Maddie's next big test came in the form of COVID. At the time, my wife and I both worked in healthcare. We were both very careful when coming home, but we knew it was a matter of time before COVID came to visit our house. My wife's symptoms started first. Soon after, Maddie spiked a fever. Now, we're not even a full year into the pandemic yet. I called Maddie's pediatrician, and they wanted us to go to the ER right away. Maddie was sick, but she was breathing normally. We chose to treat her with Motrin and Tylenol. The fever subsided after 2 days, but then came the cough. Maddie's cough was the scariest part. It would not go away. We took Maddie into the urgent care twice. Finally, she was diagnosed with post-COVID pneumonia. The combination of COVID and pneumonia would weaken any adult, let alone a 5 or 6 month old. Maddie wasn't really herself for a few months. All she wanted to do is lay there or snuggle. She wasn't rolling anymore. She was kicking her feet and moving her arms, but that was about it. When we took Maddie back to her pediatrician, she was 4 months behind in her milestone scoring. So, our pediatrician decided to be proactive. At the time, there were stories coming out of Southeast Asia regarding post-COVID delays in infants. Most of these stories were coming out of the Philippines. We were all in uncharted waters in terms of what to do. The only thing that we could do is send Maddie to a pediatric physiatrist. The long, grueling sessions of physical therapy and occupational therapy started. Maddie was making incremental gains, but still not progressing like she should. The diagnosis of post-COVID delay was still at the forefront of everyone's mind, But due to Maddie's head size starting to lag behind, new words were being thrown around. Scary words. We started to hear about Rett syndrome, Angelman syndrome. To be sure, we were referred to a geneticist. The genetic testing would take about a month to come back. In that month, there was a lot of praying, a lot of worrying, and in that month was Maddie's first set of seizures. I came home from work one day. It was just like any other day. I put Maddie on my lap while Nicole was cooking dinner. Maddie started to make a jerking motion. This, by itself, wasn't abnormal. However, as I looked into Maddie's eyes, she was there, but not there. It's such a surreal look. I made a decision. I was freaking out on the inside, but I had to remain calm. I called for Nicole. She came out to the living room and took one look. That's a seizure. Over the course of the next 7 hours, Maddie would have 6 violent seizures. She was transported to Helen DeVos Children's Hospital. I followed closely behind the ambulance. I walked through the doors of the hospital at 1 a.m. They hooked Maddie up to do an EEG. We were there for 2 more nights. During the day, various doctors and nurses were in and out of her room. Every time Maddie twitched, my heart sank. I remember trying to stay strong for Maddie and for my wife. But I remember taking a shower in the bathroom and just breaking down. This was my baby. This was my child. It all seemed so surreal. We talked to the neurologist before Maddie was discharged. The neurologist talked about Rett syndrome and Angelman syndrome as a possibility for the cause of the seizures. We were told they would be able to tell by her brainwaves if this indeed was Angelman syndrome. We took our Maddie home and held our breath. 2 days later, the results of her EEG were available online. We read the report. There was no mention of Angelman syndrome. We had dodged the first bullet. The date December 3rd, 2021 will forever be seared into my brain. I'm not going to say it was a day of infamy, but our whole family dynamic changed that day. I was driving back to work. I was on my lunch break. My phone rang and the caller ID said Spectrum Health. I answered the call and a woman greeted me. She told me my wife was on the line as well. Again, I was about to be blindsided. I figured that if they were calling, it was to tell us nothing was found. I thought we had dodged the second bullet, the Rett syndrome diagnosis. I was still holding out hope that Maddie was neurotypical. Then the woman from Spectrum told us the result. Maddie had Angelman syndrome. This was the start of my grieving. With Angelman syndrome, it affects the whole person. There's speech difficulties. There's neurological difficulties. There's low muscle tone. There's sleep difficulties. There's such a wide range of daily life that this syndrome touches. I might never hear my daughter say daddy. I will never walk my daughter down the aisle. I will never see my daughter graduate from college and start a family of her own. I might never have grandchildren. I will forever be my daughter's caretaker. I will die one day, and I'm not sure that my daughter will be safe. I don't know where she will go. I don't know who will care for her. During the first 100 days of Maddie's diagnosis, we found the Angelman community. Strangers that we had never met reached out to us to see if we were okay. Strangers that we had never met sent us care packages. Our family and friends rallied around us. There were countless messages, texts, phone calls, date night packages, prayers, all for our Maddie, all for our family. I watched my daughter grow after the diagnosis. I watched my daughter hit milestone after milestone. I'm greeted with a smile and a giggle every morning from my daughter. She's safe. She's happy. I started to break down what I originally hoped for before Maddie was born. I hoped she was safe. I hoped she was happy. I hoped she was healthy. Maddie's seizures are thankfully under control at the moment. Her seizure medication is doing wonders. I've started to imagine a new life for Maddie. I'm on the other side of grief. There are times when I get sad, when I wish she was just running around the backyard and causing trouble. But then I see her gain a new skill, and how proud I am that she's pushing forward. I do not know where this diagnosis will take our family. There will be hard times. There will be good times. There will be times where I won't know where to turn. I do know that my wife and I will be there by Maddie's side through all of it. We love our little angel. We're just along for the ride.